Let's talk about 1031 exchanges. If you've invested in real estate before, you've likely heard of these four numbers at some point. The 1031 exchange is a feature the IRS offers real estate investors outlined in the IRC Section 1031 that allows for capital gain tax deferment and can be used to build portfolios and maximize real estate profits. In a nutshell, it allows you to take the profits from the sale of your investment or business property and move them into another property without having to pay capital gains taxes on the sale. In a non-1031 real estate transaction, if you had purchased a property for $300K and then sold it for $500, you would be required to pay capital gains taxes on the $200K profit. A 1031 would allow you to take the full $500K and move it into a similar investment property or multiple properties without having to pay any taxes whatsoever. And whenever there's an opportunity to avoid paying taxes, you should do it. Repeating this process over and over is exactly how savvy investors build incredible portfolios. Being that it is the IRS, there are some strict rules you need to follow for a 1031 to be considered successful. And if they're not followed to the T, the exchange is considered a failure. But don't worry, the only penalty is that you'll be liable for those taxes on the sale. So let's break this down. You own a duplex, and you want to sell because the market is hot, and you want to buy a fourplex with better cash flow. The first thing you would do is contact a qualified intermediary to handle the exchange. They'll make sure every rule is followed and handle the proceeds from the sale. If that money ever hits your account, you'll have to pay taxes on it. So you sell your duplex, all while looking for a new fourplex to buy. As soon as your property sells and the intermediary has the funds, you'll have 45 days to identify a new property to buy. You can identify as many as 3 properties to be on the safe side, and identifying them means it needs to be in writing, typically a signed buy-sell agreement provided by your realtor, something that states that the funds are going to be coming from a 1031 exchange. This all has to happen within 180 days of the sale of your original property. However, if you're doing this towards the later part of the year, it could be less because the other deadline is the due date of the income tax return for the year the property was sold, whichever date comes first. These deadlines cannot be extended except for under one specific circumstance, a presidentially declared disaster. Once you've identified your new property and met all the deadlines, the intermediary will take the entirety of your funds from your first sale and apply them to the purchase of your new property. And as long as the name on the first title matches the name on the new title, all is good, and you've just dodged capital gain taxes. You can also transfer into a single member LLC as long as the only member is you. A 1031 seems pretty straightforward. However, there are some caveats, and let's get into those. While there's no limit on how many times you can do a 1031, the properties have to be what's considered like kind, which means it's of the same nature, character, or class. The property condition doesn't really matter, just that you're exchanging one investment property for another, and they're both within the United States. Another big one is that primary residences don't qualify for a 1031. You won't be able to sell the house you're living in and 1031 into a new house. And if you own a vacation home, you'll need to rent it out for at least 24 months before it will qualify. That doesn't mean single-family homes are completely out. If a tenant has lived in the house at least 14 days a year for 2 years, and the owner hasn't used it for personal use for 14 days a year for 2 years, then that property would qualify. Another disqualifier would be flipping. 1031s should be held for at least 2 years for the IRS to not consider it a flipped home. It's really designed to buy and hold and collect rental cash flow. This program typically sees investors moving profits from one property to the next, upgrading all the while and deferring their taxes. If you hold all the way until the time you meet your maker, all those deferred taxes are wiped clean when the property is transferred to your heirs. They can even immediately sell the property at the new cost basis value without paying any taxes. However, if they wait and the property goes up in value, say 5 years later, they'll have to pay the difference between the cost basis and the new sold amount. If you've managed to stay alive and you want to sell your property but not do another 1031 exchange, the original deferred gain plus any additional gain realized since the purchase of the replacement property is going to be subject to tax. If you truly want to work the system to your advantage, start with a duplex and keep doing 1031s until you own an entire apartment complex with tons of cash flow. And then just take the long nap and pass the property to your heirs. And all that buying and selling and upgrading will be completely tax-free. This is how you use real estate to build generational wealth, my friends. Happy investing.